Welcome to the Word of Life podcast for September 2024, presented by Focolare Media. My name is Nick Cianfrani and I'll be your host. In today's episode, we'll be listening to experiences that relate to this month's Word of Life, which says, "Be doers of the word and not merely hearers, who deceive themselves," taken from James chapter 1, verse 22. Before we begin with the stories, I'd like to ask Tom Rowley to start us off with a short introduction.
We have come to know that God, who is love, loves each one of us immensely. Our desire to respond to that love is to do what He wants us to do. We can hear His words through the opportunities we have from the readings in the liturgy and through the monthly Word of Life, as well as many other sources to help us understand our path forward. Jesus not only wants us to hear what He says, but also to be His arms, legs, and voice for others to have a share in the life God calls each of us to live. The Apostle James exhorts us to put the words of Jesus into action.
Hello, Father Andru. It's great having you on our podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yes, and I had the great pleasure of meeting you at Catholic Heart Work Camp recently, and with the approximately 300 teenagers, just making an amazing experience for a week, and it was just so awesome. It was my first time, so I really enjoyed it, and it won't be my last, that's for sure.
Good.
But during one of the homilies at the masses, I was very touched by one of the stories you told, and I thank you for agreeing to come and share it with us. And before you do that, could you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. Yes. So I am Father Andru O'Brien from the Diocese of Peoria in Illinois, and I've been ordained now for 6 years. So I was ordained in 2018. I served my first 3 years really helping at a grade school in Peoria itself. And for the last 3, now starting 4, I have been a high school chaplain and then a parish priest in Champaign, Illinois. And so it's been a beautiful life. Very grateful to be a priest.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, thanks for that. But listen, I hand the mic over to you now, and
Sure.
we're excited to hear your story, really.
Yeah. So I guess we'll start with just where I was that day. So I was in a place where I think the Lord knew that I needed this as much as the lady who I was visiting. Just ministry. I'm sure you and your apostolate know ministry can grow dry a little bit. It can get kind of exhausting, and so there was one day. It was already a stacked day. I get a phone call or a text message actually from the secretary, and he said, "Hey, can you come and anoint a woman?" I'm like, "I have a funeral and then I have the reception. Maybe I could sneak it right in the middle of those two." So I did. And as I was going there, my heart was just not really in it, but the Lord was preparing me for something beautiful. And so I'll also say, I've always had a deep devotion to Our Lady, and I've always known her promises. Really, since I was in 2nd grade, they gave us our scapular, and they're like, if you wear this and you pray to the Blessed Mother, then you get to bypass purgatory. And I'm like, oh man, that promise is sweet. I don't want to go there. I want to go straight to heaven. And I didn't remember all the other promises, but this moment really brought one of them back to mind. And it was, so as I go to anoint this woman, and she had been away from the church for probably 30 or so years. She had gone through a divorce in her early days. She felt very isolated from her community, very judged by her community. And so she just basically left the church and quit her practice of the faith. She went to a non-denominational church in town, and she had found some life there, but she had really been away from the Catholic Church. And so she had been on this journey away. She was in hospice, and the hospice nurses weren't able to figure out why she wasn't going. So these are like the best nurses around. They know vitals, they know everything, and they can tell you almost down to the minute when someone is going to pass. And they were looking at her vitals, they were looking at everything, and they're like, she should be dying. She should be gone by now. And so they brought all the family in, and they thought maybe she needs to say goodbye to someone. They're like, is anyone else there? They're like, nope, no one else. Everyone has said their goodbyes. have we told her that everything's going to be okay? Yes, we've told her everything's going to be fine. We're taken care of. They're like, does she have any faith? And they're like, well, she grew up Catholic. And they said, maybe try calling a priest. And that's where our stories collide. And so I'm that priest. I'm sitting in my car. I'm driving there, and she was waiting for me, essentially. So I go and I anoint her, and I do the anointing on the forehead, and then I hit the left hand with the sign of the cross, and the right hand had been under a blanket. And so I asked if the family could kind of uncover her hand so I could anoint the right hand. And as I look, I will never forget the image. Just wrapped around it is a rosary. I'm like, this woman has been away from the church. And I look at the family afterwards. I'm like, how beautiful that is. She's just been hanging on to this rosary. And they're like, that's the one part of her Catholic faith she never lost. She prays it faithfully every day. And so I anoint her. I walk out of the room, hop in my car, and my phone rings. And I'm like, did I forget my oils? What happened? Why is the family calling? And they said, Father, we just want to thank you because immediately after you left the room, Mom passed. And right then, my mind went back to those forgotten promises of the Blessed Mother, where if you remain faithful, you will never die without the sacraments. And it was immediately after I got there, I anointed her, that her soul was set free to go to heaven. And the nurses were confused. They're like, why isn't she going? Well, we know our Blessed Mother takes care of her own.
Fantastic. That is so beautiful. It just, again, it touched my heart again, listening to it a second time. It's just so,
Yeah,
so
it's one of
touching.
those that always moves me as well. So I can always, when I'm in those dry seasons, I go right back there and I'm like, my priesthood is very important. Touching people's lives and bringing them grace.
Yes, yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's one of those stories that I know I was blessed to experience, and so I love to pass along.
Great. Well, now a number of people will be able to hear it and to benefit from it. So thanks again, Father Andru, for joining us.
Yeah, and God bless you.
Thank you. Hi, Manuel. It's great to have you on our podcast today. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm very happy to be here today.
Great. Thanks, Manuel. And I remember when you shared this story that you're about to share with our listeners a time ago, and I was really impressed, and it stayed with me, it stayed in my mind because it really was a beautiful experience. But before you share it, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm originally from Costa Rica, a small little country in Central America, and I've been here in the United States for many years. Practically, I don't know, about 25 years. But I have a lot of beautiful moments in Costa Rica, especially with my family. Both my parents are already in heaven, but they taught me a lot about charity, about the love of our neighbors. So that's what I can say a little bit about me.
Thanks for introducing yourself. So we are so happy to hear your experience now. So go ahead.
Yeah, I was in Costa Rica. My family had a farm, so I was actually a farmer there in Costa Rica. One evening, I received a phone call from a friend, and this person was asking me if I could take a person into the farm. He was a homeless person, not only a homeless, but he was practically begging money to bring home, especially to his father, who was addicted to drugs, because he will force him to go begging, and he will go out and beg and bring the money, and of course the father will use it for drugs. And of course he was very surprised, very surprised, to be treated that way, because he has not been treated that way for many years. Neither from his father, neither from his people, no one, no. So it was very difficult. And he started working very hard, really hard on the farm, and it make a big difference for everybody. After a couple of weeks, I had bought him new shoes, new clothes, everything. After a couple of weeks, he told me, I don't want to be here anymore. Uh, So I said, why? I mean, we did something wrong to you? I said, no. I just wanted to go away. I can't stay here. So I say, okay, thank you, Will. I wish you well and all of that. So he left. Uh, but a week later, he came back. His clothes were completely, a mess, no shoes. And I said, well, what happened? And he said, nothing. Can you take me in again? I said, sure. I mean, you are welcome. Uh, and I asked him again, what happened to your shoes? They were new. Someone stole steal your shoes or something. Uh, and he said, no, I sold them. Why? Because I need the money. So at first I thought he need the money for drugs or for his father or something. And I said, you sold those shoes because your father asked you, or no? He said, I have two small brothers that live in a foster home, and they don't have anything for school. So I sold the shoes and I bought them the things for the school, and that way they can go to school. Anyway, I took him in. He did this for 7 times. 7 times he went away and he came back and said, and finally I told him once, I said, listen, this is the 7th time that you are leaving and you are selling your clothes and you're selling your shoes. I understand. Why you don't bring me to your brother and sister? That way I can meet them and I can provide for them. And he looked at me and said, why you are so good to me? I mean, don't you see that, I am, bad and, I'm taking advantage of you. Don't you see that? And I met his brother and sister and the person who was taking care of them. And of course, we make a list for the school, things and for clothes and stuff. And we brought them these gifts, and it was nice because it was the first time that he came to me and say thank you. I really thank you. The years went by, and of course, people will always criticize me and say, why you're taking care of this person? He's always doing the same to you. He's taking advantage of you. And I say, yes, probably he's taking advantage of me, but it's Jesus, what can I do? So I've been doing this for the past 12 years of my life. The past couple of years, he turned completely. He became a father of 2 children, responsible. He has a steady job. And now he doesn't call me to say, I need this and I need that. He calls me to say, how are you? I miss you. And you feel like, it's beautiful, to see that, because, that the person is really, calling you to simply say hello. So once in a while, he calls me and say, listen, I help this person. I help this other person. So I think that's beautiful. Somehow you feel like there is something there, no? That Jesus that I saw in him, now he see that Jesus in others, and that's the most important thing for me. So that's a little bit the story of Jairo and his family. Thank you.
Thanks again, Manuel, for sharing.
Okay, thank you.
Before we continue with the next story, I'd like to invite you to consider making a donation to Focolare Media. Your donation will help us continue to produce inspiring podcasts. Visit our website, focolaremedia.com/donate, and specify that your donation is for the Word of Life podcast. Thank you in advance for your support. Welcome, Florence. It is a great joy having you on our podcast. How are you?
Oh, I'm well, Nick, and thank you so much for welcoming me.
Florence, would you mind telling our listeners something about yourself?
Okay. Maybe not too many people know this, but I was born in Jakarta, Indonesia, and I came to Canada as a student, but not directly from Indonesia. I was living in Hong Kong first, and then, but before Hong Kong, I was living in many other countries too, like Germany and China. So, um, so I came to Canada on my own and not having too many friends here, but except one or two. And but I felt so at home in Toronto, Canada.
Great. Well, listen, I'll hand the microphone over to you, and we are eager to listen to your experience. So go ahead.
Okay. So 2 years ago, I was introduced to a family by a couple in my parish whom I've gotten to know for several years, just by speaking to them after Mass. The wife of the couple is Vietnamese, and the husband's parents come from Indonesia. So that's where we connected. So that was where I was from. One weekend after a Mass, out of the blue, the wife of the couple asked me if I would like to be introduced to a refugee family who had just arrived in Canada and who could speak my language. As it turned out, only two of the children of the four that they have could speak my language, and the parents could only speak Vietnamese. Still, I was overjoyed for getting to know them. Communicating with the parents was difficult, so I relied on translations from Vietnamese into English from their two older children. Since they lived not too far from my place, I offered to pick them up for Mass every weekend and bring them home after Mass. A few months later, the family announced that they had to move from the area, that is from my area, since their sponsor have completed their 1 year obligation to support them. And now they are on their own. They found a basement apartment a little distance from my parish. However, I continue to bring them to Mass every weekend, except not in my parish, but closer to where their new apartment is situated, and better still, to a Vietnamese parish where they feel more at home with the language. Since I have an English missal of my own, I was able to follow the Mass, except for the homily. I continue to bring them to Mass every month, or several months later, help them with getting their baby baptized, and get their 10-year-old girl, their third child, registered at a Catholic school. The couple who introduced them to me commented that I need not do all of that anymore, since they have moved out of their parish and I have done enough for them. Be doers of the word and not merely hearers who deceive themselves. After the couple became aware of the word of life, they admitted that I was right for not withdrawing my support for the family. Recently, I had contracted the shingles and had stopped bringing them to Mass for several months in a row for fear of giving the virus to their little 2-year-old girl. Their mother had called me several times already to let me know that I am missed by the family. In fact, their mother offered to stay with me for a few days as well to help me manage my apartment and to cook for me while staying with me. If I have let her, she would have come to my place right away. Their care for me is genuine, and I felt very moved by it.
You know, we speak about mutual love, and you see how this family reciprocated the love that you showed towards them. So it's you also allowed them to love you back, you know. So that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. That was really wonderful to hear.
You're very welcome, Nick.
And thank you for joining our podcast, and all the best for everything you're doing.
Thank you, Nick.
So thank you for joining us today. I hope you've been inspired by the wonderful stories shared. I look forward to being with you again next month. And to listen to a reflection and a commentary on the Word of Life, log on to your favorite podcast platform and look for Word of Life Podcast by Focolare Media. There you will be able to listen to previous episodes. I invite you to join me each month for new episodes. And you can also read additional experiences in Living City magazine. Bye for now, and God bless.